Good afternoon, everyone. Amy Arndt from Wisconsin Family Ties. I coordinate the conference, but I'm also a parent-peer specialist and an advocate, and I have families that I work with. I've had the pleasure of working with Kerrie, Wallenfang-Hirte for quite a few years. And I can't believe she's here doing this. I'm so proud of her, but I just wanted to let everybody know, this is Sylvia. She was much more than somebody who just had mental health issues. She was a person. She was wonderful. She liked the same things that we all liked. The first time I met her, it was her birthday. It's December 12th, and her mom let her come to a fancy coffee house downtown. And she looked at her and she said, "Can I have something with caffeine?" And I still remember it to this day. Kerrie let her. But the sad thing was, she was just released from Winnebago Mental Health Institute on that day. And we sat down and we talked. You know, she was eyeing me up like, who are you? Another one of these people who says they're going to help me, and really nothing's going to happen. And then when I asked her, well, what do you want to have happen? She looked at me and she said, "I'm afraid of small places. I don't like to get held down." And that's exactly what she went through her whole entire life. Her mother, from early on, tried to get help, called Wisconsin Family Ties because she wasn't getting anywhere, and I don't think nobody knew what to do, but what they weren't doing is helping Sylvia with her mental health issues, to the point of Kerrie had to go through and do a voluntary GIPS order. All the different things she was doing, nothing was put in place. She had a Chapter 51, which meant
It's Wisconsin-wide. It should be anytime you do have a Chapter 51, anytime a child or an adult has a Chapter 51, they should be able to punch in their name, and it should come up on file that they have that. In several instances, that doesn't happen. So what happens to our children is they end up in juvie or they end up in jail. When they end up in jail, they just end up sitting there, and they can't afford lawyers, so it's a big issue.
And with that, I was just going to introduce her and see, she's got so much to say. I can't wait. But talking about the Chapter 51, it was, a social worker deciding, okay, yep, maybe you go have a stay for 2 days. Maybe you'll stay for a week. There was one time we were going to court. I happened to be at the courthouse for another court hearing, so I was there 5 minutes maybe before Kerrie was. I saw Sylvia in the hallway, in a wheelchair, with urine in her pants, dirty hair, drooling, which is not what she was like ever before. I had to ask the transport person, can I get her some water? What the is going on here? That day, Kerrie stood up and she said, "No more. I'm not doing this voluntary order. We're done. I'm taking her home, and I'm going to try going forward with myself." And with that being said, Sylvia's birthday, as I said, was December 12th. The anniversary of her passing is December 16th, so it's not even been a year. Kerrie's been an activist. She's been speaking Milwaukee County. She's been all over, and I just can't say enough about this mom. And you can tell it's emotional for me because I've worked with her for 5 years. So Kerrie and her husband, Sean, over there too, here supporting her. So thank you, everybody.
Hi, everybody. This is the first time I have told Sylvia's story from the time she was young on. So forgive me if I'm a little emotional, because like Amy said, it hasn't been quite a year. I'm trying to make an impact for families so that they really know the truth of what's really going on in our communities and in our local governments. Sylvia has had a struggle from the time she was young. So she was born 2002, December 12th. By the time she was 3, she was already acting out, doing things that normal children don't normally do. So I'm a concerned parent, so I look for help. I'm like, okay, well, we need some help for her. Maybe we can find some counseling. We were in the 0 to 3 birth because I was a single mom at that time. During this time, as I was searching for help, there wasn't much there for Sylvia because she's only 3 years old. Back then, there wasn't really anything. So I continued my search, and we found counseling services. They wanted to put her on medication already at 3 years old. ADHD medication because she was an extreme case, which is not common in girls. Normally, extreme cases are found in boys. So when you have it in girls, it's quite different. They have a lot more energy and do a lot more things that more boys wouldn't even probably want to do because they're scared of heights or whatever. I also found out during some testing and stuff she had some sensory issues. Also, going out in public places was a struggle for us. So I was the type of parent where I gave her a timeout. So for example, we go into a restaurant. She's young, she has to be able to be social, be able to sit in places as everybody else or every other child does, but for her it is a struggle. So I used to take her to the restaurant. One of the places we would go to was a buffet. That way we had enough time, as much time as we wanted to eat, whatever. I would take her in there. Sometimes there would become a lot of people. She would get agitated. I would just kindly take her to the bathroom and say, hey, take a time out. Now you know there's always somebody who follows you to the bathroom and watches you, wondering if you're abusing your child or if you're actually just trying to help your child. In my case, I was trying to help her so I could return her to the restaurant and she could continue eating and stuff. So sometimes these trips to the diner would maybe be an hour. Sometimes it would be 2 hours. But I always wanted to make sure she ate well and she got the socialization she well deserved. As time went on, she went into school then. When she got into early Head Start, there were some problems. She's very helpful. She always wants to help anybody. Clean off tables, set up, whatever, because that's what she was used to doing at home. I would always involve her in my daily activities because I knew as she got older, it could possibly be a struggle for her just because of how young and distracted she was all the time. So we come to the part where this is where things really get tough. And this is where some of it might be hard for the rest of you because when you hear and see what they actually do to children inside the schools is terrible. So she's in kindergarten and she acts up. Now she's had behavioral issues in daycares, in and out of daycares, never kept in a daycare, kept with my family for short periods of time. So kind of like just bounced around here and there. The only safe place she really had was home. But in school, when she had to be there more, it became very difficult. She would lash out to the point that it would actually take 2 people to remove her from class. Now, mind you, this is a kindergartner. She was smaller than most kids because of just who she was. So they would carry her out by her shoulders, and another adult would carry her out by her legs. A social worker had me come to the school and said, Kerrie, this is what they're doing to your child. Do you know this is happening? I said, no, I didn't know. I know that she's disruptive in class, but I don't know what they do to her. Usually when I showed up to school, she was always sitting in the principal's office. So I really never got to see how they handled her. When I did see that, I was very upset. I expressed my concerns with the tribe as well as Brown County. Brown County didn't seem to care, neither did the tribe seemed more concerned. That's why they showed me, because there was a struggle between county services and tribal services, which is still to this day. After that, after I got to see her, what they had done, I made such a fit that they decided that they were gonna put her in a class by herself. So now she's secluded. They run all kinds of tests on her, see where her abilities are at and everything. We find out Sylvia can read. This girl is at a second grade reading level by the time she is in kindergarten, which is amazing to me as a mother, because I'm like, she can read. I didn't even know, but I used to read to her a lot. Sorry. So they seclude her in this room, and they keep her there. Meanwhile, they do up an IEP. An IEP is for what they're supposed to do with children for when they have behavioral issues in school. Mind you, during this time that they're creating everything, I'm a single working mom. I'm a hairstylist. I work in a place where, you're doing hair. Do you want me to leave while I'm doing somebody's color? But I continually have to leave my job because there are incidents at school that the school doesn't want to deal with, but they put it on me as a parent because I'm the parent. I found out later on that the school is not able to do that. They are supposed to find a way to keep our children in school so that they learn. But I didn't find out about that till many years down the line. During this time, Brown County is showing up at my house thinking that I am abusing my daughter because she is acting out in school. I allow them into my house, and they realize nothing is going on. But, they just linger around. Back then, I had an alcohol problem too as well. That kind of lingered around. I struggled with it a lot, and I felt it was due to some of the personal problems I had from when I was young. That was never dealt with. Now, ADHD seems to run in my family. I was never diagnosed. Could it have possibly helped my child because they never properly diagnosed me? The only thing I've been known to have is alcoholism and PTSD, as well as some other things. What do they want to give you? A pill. That's what they want to give our children, is a pill as well, to not only make them sleep, to behave, to act right. A pill doesn't fix everything. But the thing is that as Sylvia got older, there was more things in place for her, more seclusion and more restraint. After kindergarten, she started they actually had a small school for kids who had behavioral issues. It was either lower functioning, higher functioning, just kids with extreme behaviors. They had this in one of the bigger schools because they didn't know where to put it. In the school, there was restraint. Sylvia had an issue with some of her behaviors was disrobing and urinating and spreading feces. They would not tell me everything that she was doing. I basically had to find out on my own. The worse it got, that's when they told me something was wrong. If it was something little, like her shoving a table through a wall, that was nothing. To me, I thought it was something. Like, you're just allowing my kid to shove a table through a wall, and that's okay. She doesn't do that at home, but it's acceptable in school. I often wondered why it was so bad in school for her. She struggled so much with her behaviors in school. They would always try and keep her behind as well, even though she was smart. Now, we knew in kindergarten she was already at a second grade reading level. Why wouldn't they try and challenge her? Why wouldn't they try and see if there was more that they could do instead of trying to keep her in a small class? That's exactly what I did. She got into middle school after being in being into the small schools that they have provided, that I said, you know what? I think it's time that you push her. Let's see what happens. They did. From there on, Sylvia continued to grow. She felt better about herself. She felt included. She felt that she could be with other kids and act like other kids, just like anybody else wants to. The only problem was, yeah, there's bullying because she wasn't like everybody else, but she really made an effort. And she was a very good student. I heard from a lot of her teachers, they really enjoyed having her in the class because she was always willing to participate, maybe even sometimes overly participate. That's when she was in middle school is more when we got involved with the county. The county started springing up more. Sylvia became creative a little more. She learned how to use a phone so she could call 911, call people, whatever. It was a disruption in my life, but I did the best I could. I kept the phone from Sylvia. Sylvia never had electronics at home, none of it, just because of the behaviors that she struggled with, connecting with the wrong people, whatever it may be. So when she went to school, sometimes police officers would be sitting there waiting for me. Like, Kerrie, we had a report about this or that, and I'm like, okay, come on into my home, here we go again. They're coming in and out, you know. One of the stories is that I actually locked Sylvia up in a dog cage. And they came to my house and they said, do you have a dog cage? And I said, yeah, I do. But I said, it's up in the garage. You're more than welcome to look in the garage and come in my house and look. I've never told them they were not able to come in my house. I'm a very inviting person, so I feel like I'm doing the right thing by inviting them. Sometimes it's not. I found that out later, how sometimes it's not good to have the county involved with your life. But I want to get back to the story of, you know, like after that, we continually had visits with the county and stuff. And I ended up drinking more because I felt like I didn't have the support I needed. Not only from the county, but also from the tribal people. Me and my daughter were lost in the system. Nobody was there to help us. I worked, so I didn't qualify for food stamps. I had my own home. I paid my own mortgage because that was the only way I could keep her in the house. When you're living in a rental property, they do not allow you to change the home to make it safer. So I did my hardest. I picked myself up, bought a home so that I could keep her inside and safe. I would have to put an alarm on her door, like as if you were walking in a store, and it would go off. She opened that door. Nobody could shut off the alarm but me. Nobody had the code but me. That way, I knew her safety was ensured. So, in the middle of the night, if she even woke up, I knew she got up because she was so smart. She would open a door and close it with past ones. This one, she opened it, she tried to close it, it didn't matter. The alarm still went off. So I always knew where she was. I knew she was protected. So once the drinking got a hold of me, I lost Sylvia to the foster system. That's where all our troubles really began, because they didn't know what to do with Sylvia. They had tried several different things. They tried putting her in foster homes. They tried forcing her on people who had worked with Sylvia without her medications. And this is the county saying, hey, take this child, we'll pay you, we'll get the medication. Within a few hours, the sheriff's department was there arresting Sylvia and removing her from the home because Sylvia didn't have her medications, which is really wrong because they should have had the medication when they brought her there, which is, you know, probably standard. They didn't have her medication, and then they put her in a different foster home. Guess who ran for her medication? Mom. I want to make sure my kid's well taken care of, that she has everything she needs. But you know what? The system has my kid, and they're not even taking care of her needs. At the end of the day, I'm usually doing the running, and it's terrible because not only, one, am I emotional because you have my kid, number two, I'm worried because of the way she's treated. Number three, you guys make sure I have her medication before she goes to school. You make sure that she has her medication or I'm neglecting her. If she doesn't have her medication, it's almost like we're neglecting our children when they go to schools or whatever. So I got myself better for a while, ended up having a relapse. Meanwhile, Sylvia's in and out of facilities. We go to court to find out that Sylvia no longer has a bed in one facility they put her in to do a 30-day evaluation on her. They tell her she should not go to another home. She needs to go to a treatment facility. They're not able to find one for Sylvia because she's MA. And I do believe it was because the county didn't want to fund it. But Sylvia's, she was on CLST. That's where Child Long-Term Waiver Support Program comes in. They're supposed to help you with all these services. Day services, which is treatment services for our children who have behaviors. Child care, any type of child care basically. Rest bed, personal supports. They're also supposed to help you with finding these facilities that children are supposed to go into. I know there's one that Brown County likes to use, and it's mock village programs. But the only way you get in that program is if your child has severe behaviors, and either if it's recommended by the school or a county worker. Now, this program is funded by our state. And why should it be that way? Why should it be that only certain kids can get only into certain programs when a lot of our children here in Wisconsin have a lot of behaviors? There's a lot of autism, there's a lot of Down syndrome, there's a lot of ADHD, these kids who have extreme behaviors. Once they had Sylvia in their care, they recommended her to MVP, not to a treatment center. Now, MVP is like a treatment setting. It's not a treatment center. In there, they have adult family homes, all this other stuff, even children's foster care. While Sylvia was in their foster care, there was many things wrong. One of the things that they do is they work with the schools. They work with the county, and they're able to go to the school, pick up the child if there's a crisis, and bring them back to their facility. There they remain for the rest of their day in school. It's usually seclusion. They have to write about their day, exercise, excessive exercise, where I've seen kids who've had an extreme amount of weight on them caused by a weighted blanket that they are walking up and down stairs. Climbing steppers with weighted blankets on them. Sylvia came home one time where her legs in between were raw, due from the excessive workout that they gave her. They told me it was because of her clothing. I told them it's because of what you do to my child. You know what they said the solution was? Make sure she has workout clothing when she is here, in case there is some discipline. I thought, really? That's not right. It shouldn't matter what type of clothing she has on. What should matter is that she is safe when she comes home from there. Another thing that they used to use is food. She had a bad day at school, home, whatever. She would either get a peanut butter sandwich or a salad. She didn't get to eat what the rest of the kids ate. And how is that for a supper? I mean, I know me as an adult, a peanut butter jelly or a peanut butter sandwich is enough for me. Not really. When I knew about those days, Sylvia knew she could come home. I always had dinner made for her. They got mad at me because I did that. But I said, you know what? This is my child. This is my home. And she needs good nutrition. I found out in Sylvia's younger years that good nutrition mattered. They would give her in school like a peanut butter and jelly Smucker's sandwich, white bread, full of sugar, and you tell my kid not to act up. It's like saying, you can have this cake, but don't eat it. The thing is that part of the thing is that what they fed Sylvia in school did help with her behaviors. It wasn't all just Sylvia's fault because they don't know about nutrition. As Sylvia, when she was in middle school, we started packing her lunches. She would be able to decide what she wanted to eat for lunch, and we knew that it was more nutritional for her. Her behaviors weren't always so bad then. She could calm herself down a little bit more because she didn't have all the sugar and all the processed food with all the red dyes, yellow dyes, all that. I did an extensive research on food because of her behaviors. As time went on, Sylvia became a teenager in high school. Now we're still with Mock Village programs because that is the only service that Brown County has to help with her behaviors. They also have a rest bed program. Rest bed is where they'll take your child for a couple of days, but they didn't always have that for families. It depended on, I don't know, a lot of different things. But I know that they were paid a lot of money for the rest bed, thousands. When I think if the tribe would have been more involved, they could have probably found foster or rest bed with our Native families. Sometimes it's a struggle for us parents as Natives who have children who work in the other systems because we don't know how they're being treated. They're not raised with our traditions. And sometimes these homes are not even inspected like they should be. I know in one home, my brother, the county said that my daughter had head lice when they got her. My daughter never had head lice because I wouldn't allow that in my home. He had to fight with the county telling them, like, this is not true. But they didn't believe him. They continually thought it was part of the way we lived. Now, with the long-term support program, they continue to provide the services that they felt Sylvia needed, not what we felt we needed. They talk about how they want to put families back together. When I asked for my power back as a mom, they pulled services. So I wanted it where Sylvia would spend more time at home with me so we could do more family activities, so we could do church activities, so we could do social activities. When we did that, if she didn't show up there, they didn't come when there was a crisis. Some of these crises were things I couldn't handle. So they weren't there, so I would have to call the police to come to my aid. And hopefully the police can deal with her. If the police couldn't deal with her, she either went to Winnebago or Willow Creek or Bellin. Remember, Sylvia had a Chapter 51, which protected her from herself or others. So instead of going to MVP, she would go to a hospital. These hospitals, they keep them for 3 days. Then they let them out. Usually it's 3 days with restraint, seclusion, and then they're like, oh, they've been good for 1 day, they're good to go. Only to send them back home and go back maybe a week later, or maybe even 2 days later, like Sylvia's incidences. She was in and out of those places so much that I was like, how can this be? And that's when I finally filed for the JIPS. I went to the county and I sat there and I said, I'm not leaving here until you help my daughter. I don't know how to help her. You need to help her. The county supervisor came out, and that's what he said, is that we can figure this out. So they filed the JIPS. I filed the JIPS, put her in Winnebago, and Amy told you what happened to her. She ended up in a wheelchair, drooling on herself, urinating on herself. She can't even bathe, but they're punishing her. When they get her back there, she's still being punished. I call daily, and I ask, why is she on that medication? They said because it's because of her behaviors. Later on down the road, I find out that she actually had a reaction, and she had to be put on medication for 4 weeks after because of what the medication did. After that, Sylvia struggled with incontinence, where she couldn't hold her urine anymore. And it became a problem for her because she was like, Mom, why am I doing this? At first, it was just the bedwetting at night due to medication. But now it's during the daytime because of medication that they had given her. After the grievance, so because of what they did to Sylvia, I filed a grievance towards Winnebago. After that grievance, Winnebago decided they would not take Sylvia back ever. So that was one less place Sylvia could go for help. With the JIPS, that took a long time. It took months. At the end of the day, there I was searching for places Sylvia could go to that would be safe. Sorry about that. Weird things happen, I guess. But I forgot where I was at. Oh, okay. Yeah, so she couldn't go back to Winnebago. So like I was saying, that was one last place for Sylvia to go. And there's a lot of places out there that don't accept Medicaid. And there's also a lot of places that the county won't even fund. By the time we found a place for Sylvia to go, guess what? They were sending the kids back. Why were they sending the kids back? Because they were in another state being abused. Boy, was I glad that I didn't send Sylvia on that journey. Sylvia had already enough with everything she had been through. And that was just another thing. Like, you think the system's there to help you, but they weren't. So like Amy said, I took Sylvia home, only to go in and out of other facilities because there was no place for her. They could only put her in and out. We actually ended up where an incident where she ended up in the hospital on an overdose. They still wouldn't help her. She nearly killed herself that time. They had to keep her for 4 days because her kidneys were shutting down. The only thing I could do was take her back home and call MVP if there was an incident. And that was if they decided to show. Because remember, I asked for my power back as a parent. And they now had all the power. And this is where it all really fell apart. Because now Sylvia's going on 18. Sylvia doesn't want to live at home anymore. She wants to be out on her own, just like every other teenager. Me as the mom, I care for my child. I've given her all the skills. She can cook, she can clean, she can do her own laundry. She can spend money, she can shop for herself. I taught her how to budget even. But the thing that Sylvia can't do is find her own residence. With that comes the adult long-term support services. I was told that when Sylvia turned 18, there's a lot more services for her. And I was like happy to hear that. When she turned 18, that was a lie. What they did was Sylvia wanted to be out on her own so much that I allowed her to go to Monroe, which is near Milwaukee. They said they had the staff for her. The staff that Sylvia needed was 2 to 1. She needed 2 staff for her. They said they had that. They were given the money for that. That was not provided. But I can tell you this. They charged Sylvia. They could charge her, let's say her income was like $900. Her fee to stay in a group home would be $800. Sylvia would have $100 to spend. She'd be like, Mom, I don't want to stay here. It costs too much. I have no money for myself. And I said, I know, Syl, but this is life. So as she would stay, they would continue to have her there, say that they're supporting her. She gets upset. Sylvia ends up having police contact. She ends up going to jail because of her behaviors. Because they don't have the 2 to 1 staff like they say they do. Had they had the 2 to 1 staff, she probably wouldn't have went to jail. But that was only the first time Sylvia went to jail. Or the second time, I'm sorry, she went to jail here, but they just let her out when she was in Brown County because they knew Sylvia. They didn't want to lock her up. But then Sylvia's out there. I bring her back home. So it's kind of like back out there, back home, back out there, back home for a while. Sylvia decides she wants to stay in Milwaukee. They find another group home in Milwaukee for her now. Now she's like more inner city. She's not on the outskirts. She's from Green Bay. Green Bay isn't as big as Milwaukee. There's a lot more going on. I tell her it's unsafe. She says, Mom, I'm 18. And I'm like, okay. She says her social workers are working with her. Everybody's working with her, that they're helping her. Meanwhile, Sylvia calls me and tells me that she goes into a group home. And it's an emergency group home, and she's raped. She's raped in one of the group homes, and we find out that this guy not only raped her, but did a previous rape a few years before that. That girl wasn't believed because of her disabilities like Sylvia. So not only are children being placed away from us, they are still being abused, even as adults. After that home, Sylvia comes back home once again, only to go back. Sylvia wants to go back to Milwaukee, so I let her. She then is homeless. Then I tell her once again, you don't have to be homeless. You have your services. They should be helping you. Once again, Sylvia goes into another group home. This will be Sylvia's last group home. With that group home, I found out, looking through Sylvia's stuff, that the case manager never told the group home about any of Sylvia's behaviors. Told Sylvia, you are off to a clean slate, because they don't know about you, which is very damaging to Sylvia. Because what happens to Sylvia next is she ends up in jail. Now, she already was in jail for the last group home, so now she still has those charges and is now in jail again. Sylvia never gets to leave this jail, though. Mind you, she's still on Social Security, which doesn't allow her to pay for her bond. They have her on a $10,000 bond when she's never been a convicted felon. Maybe had a misdemeanor once or twice in her life. Nothing major. They keep her in there for 10 long months. Meanwhile, I'm calling her social worker in Brown County. Meanwhile, she has a social worker in Milwaukee, but they don't tell me who the social worker is. I'm telling Milwaukee County Jail, you need to notify Brown County, her worker in Brown County. Sylvia's calling me, telling me she's not even getting her medications while she's in there. She struggled in just life. Now she's in a jail where it's nothing like ours, where they're forced to wear clothing that is provided by the Milwaukee County Jail. There's a lot of diversity in there. There's a lot of cruelty. They're not even managed correctly. So Sylvia dies December 16th, 4 days after her birthday. Her death is a tragic, awful situation. They have closed the case, the investigation. They have not even gotten the full autopsy back. But what I do know is that when they found Sylvia and they cut her stomach open, they found that there was more items that she had ingested. Sylvia was placed on suicide watch over 50 times that I know of. That's just what I know of. Sylvia was also put on suicide watch when she didn't even belong there. I found out from some of the inmates because of the cruelty that some of the correctional officers would do. I also found out she was in and out of the hospital at least 6 times. 6 times released to a hospital for ingesting, only to hopefully let the items pass to return her back to the same facility so she can do it again. This tells me that our system is really messed up. And this isn't just from the time she's 18. You've heard me speak about this is a long journey from the time she was 3 on up. That's a long time for a kid to deal with their own mental illness, as well as parents. Half the time, I was looking for another parent I wasn't looking for services. I was looking for other parents because I knew I was not the only one. I knew my child wasn't the only child out there like this. I know that there's so many more. And how our system has failed us. Back in the day, over 20 years ago, it was a bunch of women that came together to protect our children. I don't know if you know that, but I looked into it. These women came together to protect our children because there was nothing for them. There was no county services, there was nothing. And the government has done what they have always done. They have taken what we needed, and they have created some type of system to give us what they think we need, which is sad. Because where kids don't need medications, they don't need to be restrained, they don't need to be secluded, they need more love. They need to know more people care in our system, that there's people who are there who are willing to listen. I found that for my daughter. We started going to church. She became a member of this church, and they have a teen program. My daughter would sometimes be at this program, the only one there. That's how much she would love. She was so loved there that she would be the only one there. That is the greatest part of me, is that knowing through all these years that Sylvia could still find love somewhere else other than me. That there was hope for her. And I believe that if the county would join with tribal services or whatever, I think that if we were able to come together more as a community, mothers, supports, counties, tribes, all of it come together, more of our children would be safe. What happens is they get lost in all these little systems. Because you're this, because you're this, because you're Chinese, you're black, you're Mexican. It doesn't matter. You're a human. God created everybody in his own image to be loved, not to be destroyed, cut down, but to be loved. This journey that I am on is to let everybody know what is really happening to our children and what happens to them after they turn 18, so that we know that they're really not safe. Now, I've been working with Milwaukee County Jail, looking for change, because they have a mental health and health system in there that is called WellPath. WellPath is in all our Wisconsin jails and prisons. There's been over 6 deaths in Milwaukee in a year. And they say that what they are doing is okay. I've been looking for transparency from them and everything and have gotten nowhere. People say, do you ask questions? Yeah, I ask questions. But you know what my answer is? It's under investigation. So you're never given the answers you want. But I just wanted everybody to know that there is still hope for our children. But we have to do it together. It can't be just me. It can't be just 2 people. It has to be many. It takes a village to raise children. And that comes from way back. And that still stands today. It took a village to raise my daughter. I know that. And the friends and the family that were there loved Sylvia for who she was. I'm just hoping that if you all have family or anybody who struggles, that you are there for them. No matter if they're good or bad, it doesn't matter. On the bad days is when they need you the most. And I knew that about Sylvia. I knew on her bad days she was hurting more than other days. But on the good days, they were really good. We had fun. We did a lot of things. You know, one funny thing that I found out was that sometimes this world is so cruel. But it's people like me who keep striving to change that will change it. Now, I don't know if anybody has any questions. I'm willing to answer any questions the best I can.
I know somebody in this room has to have a question they'd like to ask Kerrie. Don't be shy.
Yeah.
Call out Kerrie.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say you're not the only one, and I live this life too. My son's 14.
Thank you.
My daughter's 14. Live the same path. You are so brave.
Thank you.
Thank you for being brave.
I can tell you I wouldn't be able to do this without the support of all you. Seeing people, you know, women, I know.
What were some of the behaviors at 3 that you noticed?
Some of the behaviors at 3, we had quite a few. So some of the behaviors would be like I would try and lock the door. So I lived in an apartment. I would do like a butter knife. We had the chain lock. We had the deadbolt, and then we had the door lock. So I push a chair to try and keep it locked, put a butter knife up in there. She would be able to maneuver it all and then get out, already at the age of 3. She was able to move my car. Yes, move my car at the age of 3. I woke up and I was like, oh my God, where's my keys? Go look outside, there's cars moved, and I'm like going, what the hey? Good thing she didn't hit somebody's car. Still looking for the keys, but they're in the trunk. She left them in the trunk, which is like, whatever. She also drove my car across an intersection. Scared the crap out of me, and that was on our way to go to see our very first therapist appointment. So, also, not sleeping at night was a big one. She never slept, and she knew when I slept. So I would try and have her sleep with me, but she knows, they are so smart. They learn your breathing patterns. So one time I actually changed my breathing pattern and so I could see how she maneuvers herself. I actually had to become trickier than her because that way I could stay one step ahead of her. It's like, no, I got this. And then even, you know, like her trying to cook or make things, even at that age. By the time she was like 4, I could lay out a puzzle and I could take a little nap. And by the time I woke up, that puzzle will be done. Yeah, so when you see a kid like that, you're like, you know, they're very creative. They're very smart. They know things that most other kids don't, and they know a lot. So one thing I did notice was like she started to scan people. Let's say you're in a grocery store. She's scanning the clerk, watching every button she pushes, all the way down to the detail of her face. I would watch her scan. Now, most people don't do that. They're like, okay. No, this child would scan people. Yes?
I'm curious, first,
Yeah.
I totally echo what they said. You were so brave to come and talk, so thank you. And we have a lot to learn from you, so thank you. I'm curious, in your journey, was there ever like, when you look back and you think about everything that happened, is there like one or two things that you're like, man, if this would have gone different, I think we'd be in a different position?
Yeah. And that's where me getting my power back would happen. Once you lose your power as a parent, your children don't look at you as the authority. They don't respect you the same. They don't even like connect with you the same because there's been a wedge that's been driven in there. I'm going to use Sean, my husband, as an example. So let's say Sean, he's from, we'll say MVP. We'll say Sean's from MVP and I'm the parent. Sean comes in anytime Sylvia has a crisis and pulls her from the home. I'm stuck at home. Who's got her? Not me. He's not trying to teach me. He's not saying, hey, Kerrie, what if you do this? Or we'll teach you this. Or we'll show you this. In other behavioral modification therapy places, sometimes what they'll do is they'll have the parents sit on the other side of a wall, and actually you can see the behavior mirrored of what you're supposed to do as a parent. This place is county funded, state funded. I believe they didn't want me to have my power back because that would be funding that they would lose. That place burnt down 3 weeks after my daughter passed, or after I buried her. It's kind of funny because I was like, all right, this place just burnt down. Isn't that kind of funny after we had my daughter's funeral? And there was nobody in the facility. Amazing when they do 24-hour crisis intervention care. And there's been nothing reported. But you know what? They were up and running in 5 days. After the fire, they had a new building, all the kids' prescriptions in 5 days. There's never been a reason as to why that building burnt down. But it's tore down now. And they have a whole nother facility. It's amazing how quickly some places can get up and running when they're run by certain people. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that
Okay.
was very helpful.
I know there's been times where they've had to actually, like the county, there used to be, doctors who will come in who have teaching programs. They'd come into my home and they'd be like, Kerrie, you're doing everything you need to do. Why are they persistently on you? And the only thing I could think of was because I was an alcoholic. I had a drinking problem. But it wasn't like I was sitting there drinking all the time with my kid. I was also a hairstylist. I was a single mom, had my own home. So how is it you can make me look like that? But through my trials and errors, I have 8 years coming up alcohol-free because my mother told me, nobody will care for Sylvia like you do. That was important to me. Sylvia was important to me. She was my only child. Didn't matter how much energy she took. It took a lot more to quit drinking. But you know what? I'm glad I did it. Because I can't say, I wish I would have did that. I should have did that. I did do it. And I was there for her to celebrate every moment. Sylvia graduated at 18. When she was supposed to, during COVID. Isn't that amazing? A kid with special needs graduates at 18. That was the highlight of her life. Her teacher said she did better at home than she ever did in school. And mind you, Sylvia was like almost a straight A student. So it wasn't like, you know, she was a failure. She tried. She pushed herself because I pushed her. And that's what we need, is we need more positive. We need to figure out how can we push our kids into the positive? How can we get them the positive? Instead of giving her pills, I started doing Reiki, food, making sure she's getting proper nutrition, sleep hygiene even. Sleep hygiene was a big thing for her because then she would sleep better at night. And that wasn't giving her Benadryl. Benadryl is not good. What people don't know, they hand it out like it's candy or a cough syrup or whatever it is, but that stuff is not good for their kidneys. They're not even developed. So they'll probably end up with kidney failure as they get older.
What kind of sleep hygiene did you use?
Sleep hygiene, I would use like your consistency with their time every night. Give her a warm shower. I would always use like natural stuff, more lavender. Foods you give them, like let her have crackers and cheese or a banana. Sometimes they say bananas have a lot of sugar, but bananas also fill them up and keep them fuller longer. Also music, lighting. You know, I always had a night light on for her. She didn't like the dark, so we always did night lights and music. Yes?
You mentioned early on that she was diagnosed with ADHD, and then you talked about a lot of other behaviors and things. Do you feel like anyone ever really understood what was going on with her?
I don't. So through my whole journey, one of the things that I continually asked for was, can we get a neuropsych? Can we get a neuropsych?
In 2 years.
Well, I mean, I've been asking for services Sylvia's entire life. And like I said, they pick and choose what you get. Even though I'm tribal, they kind of pick and choose what you get too, what your kid's going to be seen for, whatever. So, with that being said, Sylvia's 17, almost 18. Brown County finally says that they're going to help me. So they sign on for Brown County. Like, yep, okay. We had 3 referrals put into Bellin for Sylvia, and they were all denied. I asked the county if they would help me. They came on. It was approved. By that time, they said, the neuropsych said, there's nothing I can do for Sylvia because she has been on medication for so long. We would actually have to take her off all the medication. Now, mind you, Sylvia's almost 18, and they've already got a plan for her to ship her off. So, Sylvia, through her whole life, never got really what she needed. And even though I ask and I sit there and say, this is what she needs, she still doesn't get it. They don't get it. I even tell one of the workers there, I say, you know what? What happens? I can't keep my daughter home. You can't keep her safe. My family doesn't want her. The system doesn't want her. Where is she supposed to go? Well, we don't have to worry about that because actually what they did was they set her up for failure. Separation from the family, in trouble with the law, not making sure that she has the support she needs. Yeah. And a lot more kids are going to die in the system because of it. Yes.
I was just curious, aside from ADHD, did she have any other diagnoses?
Yes, she did. She was bipolar. She has some schizophrenic. Yeah, she had a lot of diagnoses. And to this day, do I specifically know what was wrong with Sylvia? No, I don't. and I never will. Because they give you the help they want to give you, not what you need, not what you're asking for. Any other questions? No. Well, that's where Amy comes in. Amy from Wisconsin Ties. I did that because there was no support for me. So they could talk to me and treat me however they wanted to, and I was supposed to just sit there and listen and allow them to do whatever, say whatever. And it got to a point where I was so frustrated, like nobody's listening to me. So I actually had to ask for a referral to get Amy. Yeah. Once again, I had to do my research and be like, hey, there's got to be somebody out there who's willing to help me. And I found advocates. And I found Wisconsin Family Ties. And they're paid for by Brown County. Do you think Brown County ever offered me that? Absolutely not. I found them, and then I got referred, and I even had to go back to them and say, hey, what happened to my referral? And I called Wisconsin Family Ties, and I was like, hey, did you guys get my referral? And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, there's, Amy. But Sylvia, when she met Amy, she was so happy, because she knew, like, Amy had a good heart just from that first time of meeting her.
Do you think that going back from your kids' grades, like when you started in kindergarten and stuff, do you think things are changing in the school systems now? I mean, are you seeing, do you think, I have kids on academic school, and I think that we struggle a lot with them. I do with our kids and how they work for them. But are you seeing a change in the schools from when she was in school? Are you hearing stories about them?
I don't hear anything's changing. I hear more horror stories. I mean, you're hearing about, like, some of the schools are closing down now, due to a lot of people homeschooling. When you homeschool, those kids don't get the interaction they need or the socialization that they need.
How do we advocate more for these kids? Because it does seem like it is kind of sometimes a struggle, with some of the school districts or some of the schools maybe not even having the resources or maybe the training that they need themselves to understand. So how do we advocate for our kids?
You just speak up and be honest. Don't swear because they won't listen to you. And don't get mad because they really don't like that when when you begin to have a voice, they almost they don't want you to have a voice. And like that's why I said Amy got involved with me, because she was at least I had somebody there. Like, if she couldn't change something for me, I had somebody there to hear what they're saying. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes they'll make you feel like you're in the wrong or you're doing something wrong when actually what you are doing is right. But they don't want you to feel like that. Just like, me having to go and pick up my daughter all the time when I was at work, and later on finding out that that's not even okay. They can't send your kid home unless they suspend them. And here I am picking up my kid almost once a week, if not twice a week, every other day. We don't want to deal with her. Send her home. Well, yeah, I'm taking my kid home. You're not keeping her because I've seen what you do. So, yeah. And I know it's hard. It doesn't get any easier, but it does get better if you hang in there.
So many schools are saying go half days, we just can't have the child here, we'll just send half days. And I know that's not right, but yeah, they're sending them home. And so it's trying to advocate for the kids to still stay in school, trying to figure out how to help them in the school system it is hard.
Yeah. And that was one of my biggest struggles with Sylvia, was navigating the school with the home. You know, because she can be bad at school. So what am I supposed to do? Ground her the whole, no. Like, what I did for punishment, if she had a bad day at school, so you sit in your room till school's over and then you're done and let's go on with our life, you know. So, any other questions?
I empathize with your story and your loss. My sincerest sympathies to you. But
Thank you.
I want you to also know and understand that there are so many of us in the field who 100% would never in a million years treat any of our clients like that. And that we individually, I suppose, are trying to make changes, but can only do so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so as horrible as your story is, I feel like it needs to exist for a purpose, right? So that changes can be created and made. But I'm sitting at a table of people right here that we do amazing work every single day, and I would champion any single thing that any one of these people do. And it's in similar situations to, unfortunately, what your daughter had to go through. But we try and take some of that on. We'll go into the schools and really work side by side with them. And just, so I want you to know that not all hope is lost. And I'm sorry that you had to go through this experience. But there's some of us out there that are really trying to do the exact opposite. So.
Yeah, and I'm not here to bash. I'm just saying how we need to come together more to give families I think, okay, because you're a worker and I'm a parent. My biggest struggle was workers listening to what me and my child need. Not giving us what we don't need. Like, hey, you need a parenting class. I don't need a parenting class. I'm a parent. I'm fine. But what I did need was some type of, like something that would help with keeping my child in the home. You know what I'm saying? There's programs. I know there's breath breathing. There's all these different things. But it was never that. It was removing her from the home. And when you have a child with those disabilities, removing them from the home doesn't do them any good. Is trying to figure out a way to keep them in the home where they belong with the people who do care about them so that they are safe and that they stay safe. Because the way other people treat them, not saying everybody now, you know, there are times where it only takes one time for this child to be mishandled in a certain way. That one time follows them through the rest of their life. That either leads to addiction or to something else. And that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to say we need to work together to try and help to keep our families together instead of separating them. It doesn't work. We all know it doesn't work. And I know there's a lot of social workers who do try and keep the families together. But sometimes you can't. But the thing is, the ones who are trying should be the ones who should be getting the services. The ones who aren't trying, they're getting more services than the ones who aren't. Realistically, I know because I've been there, I've done it. That's why I talk about my experiences, because I want other women to know there can be a hope. And like, I'm glad social workers are here, because then you can hear what it is from other people as well as me, like how broken our system is.
It's hard because we see it on a daily basis.
We know yes.
How broken our system is.
Yeah.
I mean, we are constantly going into homes, and it's the hard thing is, like I said, is that to hear your story and know how different things are in other places versus what our supervisors and our bosses are having us do on a daily basis, it breaks my heart to hear that things are so drastically different in other places or other organizations, because that is just not how some of us operate, and it's heartbreaking, honestly, like to know that you had to go through this. It's horrible.
Yeah, and I'm not the only one. You have two other mothers here, sitting here.
We had officers in and out of our home all the time, and we had officers saying, why you can't get the services
See, exactly.
Why are we not getting them? I would say no, they exist, but we're not.
Yeah.
You made a very solid point when you said families that are giving up get the services, and families that fight, they're doing just fine. We don't need to give them.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I've seen. So sometimes what happens is we end up with families in the system. They end up getting back on their feet a little bit. They got a job, you know, their child care, everything's going smoothly. Boom, they cut off services. Well, this person's just been back on their feet for maybe 3 months. They've never lived it good, and now you just cut off their services. What do you think is going to happen? They're going to go right back down because they're not strong enough. I was strong enough because I've been in and out. You know, I've struggled a lot in my life, and I'm a survivor. You know, and because I have that survivor mentality, it's different than somebody who doesn't have that, where they haven't been nurtured, they haven't been given, you know. I grew up, but, you know, it's just different. What were you going to
I
ask?
was just gonna say, I wanted to thank you for sharing. I am a social worker with the CLT Waiver Program, and it just kind of helps me think about the job I'm doing and what really listen to families really need. I think this will be really helpful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I want to say thank you, everybody, for coming today. I greatly appreciate it, and I hope this was a helpful session for everyone.